All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. Ashley asked me a couple months ago to do this, and without thinking, I said yes. So here I am. Let me see if I can get my screen shared with you guys. All right. Well, thanks for being here. I wanted to just share a little bit about David's house with you guys. Some of you folks I've had the opportunity to meet in the past, and I know we've talked. But I want to give you a little bit of our history. So David's house, much like many places, they were started basically because there was a family that was looking to fill a need to care for their loved one. Jay and Lois DeBoer founded David's house back in 1987. I think kind of the fun thing about Jay pictured there is Jay was a Baptist preacher who at the age of 62 retired from preaching to start another ministry, which was a home for his son. And that is his son David pictured there, and his wife Lois. They actually passed away about 3 years ago, the age of 94, and they were probably my toughest interviewers when I was interviewing for this job here. But for them, they were looking for a place that could serve their son. There were a couple of things that were really important to them. One, I think as any parent on this call can attest to, a home that was going to provide the level of care that they felt their son needed and deserved. As parents, we know we're the best at it. It's hard to hand that off to somebody else. Second, they were looking for a home that was going to be fully handicap accessible for their son. It's not always as easy to find as what you would think, especially back in the 80s. And then the third thing that was one of the most important things for them was that this was going to be a home that provided care from a faith-based perspective. And as you really look at all the options that were available back then, that funnel gets pretty small in terms of homes that are going to fit that need. So back in 1987, they were blessed with a donation of 3 acres of land.
The year before you were born. But
here in Wyoming, Michigan, and built their first 10-bed home, which was a home for 10 men. Since then, we've added homes in 94, 97, 2010, 2018, and lastly in 2022, we built an additional home and then actually merged 2 existing homes into our umbrella as well. So today we're managing 8 homes and we're serving 71 individuals in our community. 61 of those individuals live in our 8 homes that we have, and then there are 10 that live independently in other homes where we provide services to them as well. And we've grown just since 2018, we've grown from about 75 staff to 115 staff today. I'm sure any of you that are actually already in this world, and I'm sure Krista on this call will nod, is that it is hard to find the staff that we need. So even at 115, we're still looking for more staff to do what we do. In terms of who we serve, legally we serve anybody over the age of 18. Currently, our age range is, I think our youngest is 23 and our oldest is 72 years old. And I should point out too, of the original 10 men who moved into David's house, 6 of those men are still living here at David's house 37 years later. Also, we're obviously serving both men and women. In terms of the types of disabilities that we're caring for, intellectual and developmental disability is the primary disability that we serve, but over 40% of our folks have some type of a physical disability as well, which has really kind of given us a broad range of care needs that we meet here in our homes. And with those support levels, when I say semi-independent, that's somebody who, might need help, might need help with their food, might need help, with their hygiene, might need help getting dressed. And then that moves all the way on up to a full care need where we have a high number of individuals who need full care. So they're transferred from their bed to their chairs or from their chairs to their baths. Our homes are set up with ceiling lifts. And then we have a number of folks who are also very independent. We're providing supervision and meals and other assistance, but they're also pretty independent in the community as well. It's been interesting to see how we can gather all that here on one campus together and make it work. That picture there is from obviously our early days with some of our very early residents, and the majority of those folks pictured there are still here today. Ashley wanted me to talk a little bit about the programming that we offer here at David's House. I mean, obviously, as a residential care provider, our primary programming per se is really providing care in a home for those who need it here. The other parts of our day are really providing some day programming options. The majority of our residents do not go to an offsite day program in the community. Reasons for that, quite frankly, many of them have shut down or aren't receiving enough funding to keep going, which has forced us to develop our own programming. What we found was when we started our own programming here, quite a few of the residents that were going to an offsite day program decided ours was way more fun, had made the choice to participate in our programming, which was not our intention, but it's worked well, and we want our residents to have the choice of what they do with their free time. Quite frankly, the funding that we receive really does not cover the costs of our programming. It's frustrating because it is something that our Medicaid funders say we're supposed to do, and yet it just doesn't cover it. So it's something we do in spite of that, and that's part of our fundraising needs. We have a recreational therapist in another activity staff with her, and quite frankly, those two folks are developing all the programming. Some of the examples that I listed there is everything from a Bible study to cooking classes. Just recently, a small group of residents finished a sign language class and received certificates in that. We've done Spanish classes and other language classes, as well as many group outings out into the community. What I'm most excited about that we've just started this year with the addition of a recreational therapist is she's actually working through developing a leisure interest survey with each and every resident to really gauge what is it that they would like to see happen here. I would say on average, we have 3 to 4 different choices of activities per day for our residents to participate in. The house staff, house supervisors do a great job of making sure they're aware of what's on the calendar and helping them decide what they would like to choose to do for the day, as well as the option of choosing not to do any of those options per day. And in those instances, the house staff do a great job of making sure there's stuff going on in the homes. It's also an opportunity then to maybe take a smaller group out into the community with the house staff while others are at the programming that we have going on our campus. These are just some more examples. This is one of my most proud pictures because that's me looking like I'm trying to stay alive. We just finished running a 25K race. Matthew in the middle there is one of our residents, and I had gotten 2 other folks to join me in this race. The guy on the other side of me is actually my doctor. It just seemed like a good idea to have my doctor involved in that race with me. So, but Matthew still talks about this opportunity, and this is just a great way we involved other staff in this race, folks from the community, to make sure that we had a wide variety of folks represented in doing something like this. We are big on parties and concerts here at David's House. So in the summertime, we do at least 2 concerts a month at night. This was actually the Carrie Lynch Band, and they are from Nashville, Tennessee. I got a lot of credibility with our residents for bringing an actual band from Nashville up here, which we'd never done before. I got lucky. I knew a few people, and these guys were just starting out, but this was probably by far some of the most fun things we do here in terms of our programming. I'm not used to going through without questions, but I know Ashley said we'll do questions at the end, so I'm just going to keep rolling. Funding. This is a question that a lot of people ask us about, and I know when we get together in different groups, we're always talking about our funding. David's House, from its beginning, chose to be an organization that tried to operate on Medicaid funding. Obviously, if we have somebody who comes to us and wants to private pay, we are more than happy to accept that. But in our model, that would exclude the majority of the folks we're currently serving. So our current fiscal budget's about 5.4 million, and that is just to pay salaries and keep the lights on. We've done a great job working with our community mental health partners in terms of seeing some increases in our Medicaid rates. When I came on board here in 2018, the dollars we were receiving from community mental health was actually only covering about 58 to 60% of our budget. Today, we've managed to get that to cover over 72% of our budget. We've accomplished that a couple different ways. We've reined in some expenses where we can, but we've really done a much better job seeing ourselves as partners with community mental health and helping educate them as to the level of care that we're actually providing and winning some of the, I hate to say battles, but the battles we were losing in the past when we'd see a reduction in our Medicaid rates. It still requires us to fundraise about 1.5 million this year to cover the gap in that budget between our revenue and our expenses. What I wanted to show you guys there in that graph, and I think any of you currently doing this would understand this, the last 5 years, the biggest trend we see in that top line is the vast rise in our wages and compensation costs. Since 2018, we added our starting wage is $4 to $4.50 higher than it was back in 2018. And that's just barely keeping us competitive with the employment market here in West Michigan. Quite frankly, you could still go to McDonald's or Burger King and start at a higher wage than what you're going to earn here. So that's our biggest challenge. And this is something we share with our funders. You can see our care revenue, which is the middle line there. That represents the Medicaid dollars that we have coming in, Medicaid, SSI, and food stamps. Those dollars are increasing. Now, some of that increases. We've also added more residents here over those years as well. But we are seeing a small increase, but it's definitely not keeping up with the same rate as the cost of employees here in West Michigan, which I'm sure is probably pretty similar across the board. And that will continue to be one of our biggest challenges moving forward. In terms of complex needs, in terms of the care needs of the residents that we serve, I touched on it a little bit, talking about our history. We have a wide variety of care needs here. What we're seeing is the most difficult thing is seeing our residents as they age in place. We're seeing those needs become more and more complex in terms of care. The way that we've really tried to adapt to that is, for the most part, our homes are staffed at a 1-to-3 staffing ratio. Again, it doesn't necessarily fall in line with the funding that we get, but we feel it's the safest way for us to staff our homes with the variety of needs that we have. We are blessed to have been able to build into our new homes immediately the option to be adding adaptive equipment quite easily when needed. We have a lot of rooms with ceiling lifts and other types of lifts to move residents around easily, and also make it easier for staff as well to work on this. And probably the biggest change is our first 3 homes that we built here were 10 beds and 12 bed homes. Moving forward, we've moved to the 6-bed model. Obviously, part of that is due to basically the requirement for us to build nothing bigger than 6 beds. But we found that that's actually enabled us to handle these needs in a much better fashion. It allows us to match residents up together in an easier way than what we would if we were still trying to fill 12 beds and put 12 people together that would all mesh together in the proper milieu. Being licensed as a specialized residential provider, which is an additional certificate on our AFC license, is also opened up better funding for us. We actually have 3 homes currently that never had that certification, and we're finding it's actually what's holding us back from receiving the funding that we need. So we're actually in the process of changing that on these 3 homes as well. And then quite frankly, we've added some additional staff to our administration side that we've never had before. One being an RN who really serves as our hospital liaison when folks are hospitalized, as well as continuing to review things with the pharmacies such as medications, helping staff identify any problems that a resident may be having. And what we're finding is that in terms of, for an example, having a nurse on site here that can help a staff identify whether a wound has reached a point that we should be calling the doctor or should be going to the hospital. She serves as kind of that sounding board for some of our families as well when they've got medical issues that are getting complicated. And then the other individual we've added to our workforce here was a licensed social worker. We were able to hire this individual who used to be a supports coordinator, who actually ran some homes in the past. And again, the role that he's been serving for us is really overseeing the person-centered planning process with all of the supports coordinators that our residents have. What this is really starting to help us ensure is that the needs are being addressed in the person-centered planning process, which is what also basically sets the rates that we're receiving in our Medicaid contracts. Again, it's a tough position to add in terms of overhead, but what we're seeing is in the first 6 months, it's actually starting to pay for itself already in terms of helping us communicate better with our Medicaid partners. And that's really what we need in terms of continuing to handle some of the complex needs. Is if we can't get the Medicaid system to identify this with some better funding, we can't bring in more staff to help with these needs. In that pie chart on the left side, there is just a general breakdown of what we have here. We have very few residents that are what we would call very independent. The majority of our residents here need either a moderate amount to full care needs throughout the entire shift. So that is something that we're seeing. We're seeing that slice of the pie on the full care side. We're seeing that continue to grow here. It's something we're talking about every week in our admin meetings as how do we continue to provide the correct care for that level of individual. It's something we're committed to, but it's probably one of our, other than funding, it's probably one of our most complex issues we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. HCBS settings rule. This is a question we get quite a bit here. Is you guys have that word that no one likes to use, which is called a campus or a community. We usually use the word community so we don't get in trouble saying campus, right? I drew out there for you what our community looks like in the purple. The first section there on the right is our initial 3 acres of land and where David's house started. The rectangle on the left, there's the 4 acres that we purchased about 6 years ago and what we're currently expanding on. On the right, you can see, if you look at those roof outlines, those are our bigger homes and what we started with for the first basically 25 years. Those homes are amazing. The staff are amazing. They're very homey, but it is one of the challenges that we have in having a big home is in making sure that we're meeting the settings rules. So moving forward, building the 6-bed homes is obviously the encouragement and what we do. We just actually had a pretty in-depth HCBS audit done by our local regional entity. It was interesting. We knew that they were going to be focusing on things that they had never focused on in the past or maybe had looked past. We actually passed it with flying colors, even having 6 homes here on this piece of property. Some of the biggest things we learned is the fact that we've got a great documentation system in terms of anytime a resident is out on a community outing, whether it's a doctor's appointment, a family outing, an outing with staff or other folks from their natural support community. We've got it documented in logs that we're able to share to show that folks are meeting that community requirement. We have a ton of communication with our CMH partners, and that's what I'm finding is actually helping us out probably the most, in addition to the documentation. We're looking to expand. In fact, we're just submitting our permit application for the next home today. But prior to that, every rendering of the home I've sent on to our region and our local CMH funder. The plans for the rest of the property here, we've communicated with in writing as to where we're looking to go. And what I'm finding is if we're involving them in the process and the conversation, it's getting us out of a lot of potential issues down the road that we've seen in the past here. And I think being known as one of the preferred providers in West Michigan, along with the other West Michigan provider that's on this call, it does help us get past some of this. Our funders are getting a lot of calls every day from folks looking for places to live. David's house is routinely listed as the preferred place in our county that they want to live. So the last thing they want to do is keep us from growing. There aren't many providers that are looking to expand their services right now. So I think everybody's trying to do the best they can in terms of working together as partners when it comes to the HCBS settings rule. And as long as we're all working as hard as we can to meet the intention of that rule, it's working out for us. This is just a picture of some of our homes. This is our largest home, house 3. Our first 4 homes were just named with numbers. We're actually changing that because we think the residents should be able to come up with some more creative names than numbers. So it's been kind of a fun exercise. I just learned that we now have Acorn Lodge. And I know we had any Acorn Lodges here, but that's what the residents in house 2 have decided to rename their house. We're still waiting on renaming this home here, but this is our home that has residents with the most complex needs that we serve here on our campus. And this is what our newer homes are looking like. This is our 6-bed home model. This is the front of it. This is the back of it. This home has a pond side view. So the individual lives right on that corner there, loves looking out at the fountain during the nicer winter days. But this is the model that we'll be moving forward with. It's really allowed us to, I think, work a little bit more efficiently. It also allows that home to function more as a home unit in terms of it is way easier to take 6 individuals out together when they want to go out on an outing. Like just yesterday, that home there, they all went out bowling together. That is a hard thing for us to do in our 10 and 12 bed homes, to do that all together as one group. As well as this is just an easier model to staff. We touched a little bit on this when we were talking about complex needs. I know when I was at the Together for Choice conference out in Las Vegas in October, there was a session on aging in place. This has been tough for us. Many of our residents have lived here for over 20 years, like I said, including 6 that have lived here for 37 years. So how do we handle that? Their needs continue to change on an annual basis. We're doing our best to make sure that this is their lifelong home for as long as we can handle their needs. It's required a lot of communication and changes in expectations with families in CMH. We do a lot of staffing ratio adjustments in the homes when these care needs change. Again, in the past, our model was we made these staffing ratio adjustments regardless of the funding. We still do that, but we've gotten much better to get the funding to match these needs now than what we have had in the past. But we have reached the point where some folks have required full nursing care. And that is a tough thing to deal with. Number one, it's a tough thing to define, is what we're finding. When we look at our AFC licensing rules, it basically simply says, we're not authorized to do complete nursing care, but there's no great definition of what that means. So for us, it's a constant review with some of these residents of what are the care needs? Are they living their best quality of life here with the care we're able to provide? And if they are, we'll figure out how to provide that care. But once we reach a point where we're just not able to give them the best quality of life based on those care needs, then we work with CMH and the families to find another option, such as a nursing home. It's very rare for us that we reach that point, right? Quite frankly, usually we're dealing more with hospice and palliative care before we reach that point. And at that, when we reach that, we obviously bring hospice right into the home and let it run its course from there. One of the stories I want to tell you about one of our residents in terms of what's the difference that David's House makes in the community. This was actually a story I told at our last spring fundraiser. And I kind of forgot that there was a leader from community mental health in the room who called me the next day and didn't appreciate the story, but it is a story and it is what happened. We have an individual who's lived here for about 10 years, but prior to that, she lived in her own apartment for 20 years. She's an individual who actually requires full care, complete assistance with transferring in and out of wheelchairs, is not able to feed herself. And yet at the time, the best that was available for her was to get her own apartment and have services brought to her. I think it was very well intended. I think at the time that may have been the best option for her. Her mother, who just passed away earlier this year, a year ago, had actually sent me a letter with a page from the diary that she kept over the 20 years that her daughter lived on her own. And just in 1 year's time frame, she was showing me in this diary all the issues that they were running into. Care providers not showing up when they were supposed to. Annie being stuck in bed because nobody showed up to get her out of bed. Annie being put in bed at 5:30 in the evening because that was the only time somebody was available to do this. Power chairs being broken, meaning she had no transportation, no way to move even around within her own apartment. So it was after 20 years of that they were able to find a place here in David's house. And that was when we built our house 3 back in 2010. Obviously now she's got care 24 hours a day. She's got transportation available. She can finally get to church when she wants to, which was something very important to this individual and something that she couldn't do. And quite frankly, she's got a community of friends here that she can choose to see or not see whenever she wants to. She's probably one of our most social individuals that we have here. And I think her mom used to talk to me about the fact that for 20 years, she couldn't do those things and she wanted to. She also now goes to bed whenever she wants, not at 5:30 when it's convenient. This was, I think these stories are all over. I think any of us as providers can tell these stories. And it doesn't mean that system can't work for some folks, but it definitely wasn't working for this individual. And it's really why I think we do what we do here. I came into this business because I have an older brother who's lived in a adult foster care home for 27 years. And I've seen the changes it's made for him in terms of once he actually moved out of my parents' house, he became a much more social individual and had opportunities available to him that were never available to him before. So our future plans, I touched on it a little bit. We are hoping to break ground on our next 6-bed home here in May. I was just sharing with Ashley before, I actually finished our fundraising officially for this home just this past Tuesday. So we're excited to have that fully funded. And this will be a home for 6 men. One of the needs that we see growing is the need for a home for folks who actually don't require as much care as some of the folks that we currently serve. It seems like it's kind of a black hole in the system of they really could use a AFC home to live in, but they don't need some of that full supervision that's being required in some of the other homes. So we saw a growing list of folks reaching out to us for that. So this home is going to serve that need with 6 men. I should say in terms of the needs in our community, in our county alone, last we knew, they had a need for at least 200 additional beds in our county. My guess is the need is much higher than that. We have a list of interested families that's been developed over the years that's about 100 to 120 families. It's heartbreaking because we know we'll never be able to serve all those individuals. Beyond the home that we're building here this year, we do have room on our community for 2 additional 6-bed homes, something we'll be looking at over the next couple of years, hopefully adding. Quite frankly, the hardest part of adding new homes is finding the funding to operate the homes. Wasn't that hard to raise the 1.2 million to build the home, but operating it is obviously always our biggest need. And then one of the other things that we continue to talk about with what we're seeing with the programming we've created here for our residents in our community is the need to serve the broader community and those who don't live here. It's a tricky thing in our county to do that and get it funded. So we're looking at trying to strategize over the next year or two on ways that we will be able to do that. That's what I had for you. So I'll let Ashley take it from there.